You're listening to Nothing's Off the Table, the podcast where no subject is too taboo to discuss. Now, please welcome your hosts, Andy Barker and Lou Del Pree. I've got you on mute. I don't know why. It keeps doing that. Anyway, technical difficulties. What's up,
brother?
man?
Nothing much.
You have you calmed down?
I calmed down. I calmed down a little bit. So this was a little backstage pass for everybody. I was complaining to Andy. My son had a little flood damage on his car, and it was stuck at the parking lot of where he works. And he called me from his job to ask me to bring him a trash bag so he can get his stuff out of his car. And I don't live near where he works, but he knew I was coming to pick him up, and he knew I'd already left, so I would have to turn around and go get that. And I had to reply, "Hey, I find it hard to believe that you cannot find a trash bag at Lowe's." he works at Lowe's, and he texts me to bring him a trash bag. I think he'd find one.
So, we have a guest tonight.
We do.
Yes, we do. And before I bring her in, I gotta let you know I warned her about you. Just so you know that's the whole staying away from 250 feet away from schools. Well, I'm just kidding. No, that's not true.
You told her about my poor attempt at a beard where I get the reverse Hitler and the mange.
No, I think she could probably figure that out on her own.
Yeah, I do have to shave this. I do.
You do. Anyway, our guest for this evening is the wonderful Miss Holly McNeill, and she is a mindfulness architect. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry. I don't either, but we're going to find out here. So, Holly, welcome to the show. Uh-oh. You know what? I'm a moron.
All of these things you were talking about.
I had you on mute. I'm such an idiot.
He got it off though.
Yeah, but we can hear you now.
I was going to say, I can hear you. I can hear you from backstage. So I know what you did. If you didn't want me to know those things, I now know them. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know how when we don't see them on the camera, they can still hear us.
I know. Anyway, I got it. I'm there. I'm tracking.
Something about Lowe's and garbage bags.
Yeah, I was trying that whole plausible deniability or straight up lying, however you want to. Anyway.
That did bite me one time.
What, straight up lying?
No, when we were talking about something, and generally I have a jovial demeanor, but we were talking about had me angry. And the person got in the room as I was like, and then, blah, blah, blah. And, do you remember that time, Andy?
I find that so hard to believe. So talk to us, Ms. Holly. What is a mindfulness architect?
Yes.
Yeah, I am an architect. And I'm an architect. I've done large hospital work nationally and internationally, and I worked in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. I worked for Stanford. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. But at a really low point in my life, super low point, and unfortunately, sometimes we have to hit that low point. I asked, literally crying on the toilet in the middle of the night as nothing's off the table. I asked, God, life, Buddha, the universe, anyone out there listening, help me and I'll do better. Give me another chance. And I'll change. And I got that second chance. So with my karmic debt in tow, I went out to make good on that vow and spent 20 years, along with being a single mom and working, looking for that better. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew there had to be better. And over the years, I found it through different modalities of neuroscience, psychology, Buddhism. I practiced Buddhism for 5 years in the greater New York City area. Lived in a Dharma house in San Francisco. And I came up with a set of practices that represent this 20-year circuitous route I had taken. And in teaching those practices, a friend of mine reminded me, remember, you're an architect, right? And so the Mindfulness Architect was born because what architects do is take, when I was working on these billion-dollar hospital in Mecca, you take the millions of pieces and you work with the thousands of the consultants and the dozens of in-house staff to make a clear set of instructions, right? And so my gift is clarity, and so now I've created the blueprints of the mind. So There you go. That's me.
So I gotta be honest. I detected a little evasion there for a split second. You told us you hit rock bottom, and you just skipped right past that.
Yeah. Yes, I did. Well, by age 25, I was as an intern architect. I had become put in charge of the largest historic preservation project in my state, which is South Dakota. And I don't know where you guys are sitting, but a lot of people don't know where even that is, or have never met anyone from South Dakota before. But still, I was large and in charge at 25 years old. If you can imagine me standing at a construction site with 10 to 20 men standing around me, some old and curmudgeonly, some young and fine, all listening to what I had to say. A young female professional exuding authority well beyond my means. But at that point, I didn't give myself any credit. I didn't see it at all because of my conditioning as a child, right? So because of my, I don't know how far you want to go into this, but, because of patterns that I've developed as a child, and even at 25, and even as great as I do, I kept building on those foundations. And as a child, through, 1 out of 3 women are physically and sexually assaulted, I learned that touch was love. And since you asked me at age 34, I had made some poor choices around touch and love. And I was worried about, my health and my life. And if I was going to live, it was around the time of HIV and all of that crazy stuff. And I didn't know if I was going to live or die.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very low point for me, actually.
Well,
and so when I didn't, I'm like, okay, I've got this second chance and I'm going to make the best of it. So here I am.
Well, we don't judge here.
No.
But we do like to get to the bottom of things.
Well, that's the name of the podcast, I would say.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So you had this literally a life-altering, life-changing moment, and you decided that you're not giving up. You're going to take that second chance that you've been given.
That's right. And the beautiful thing about it is you don't know. All I knew that there had to be better. It would catapult me out of a mutually, even though I had everything the world said you wanted, the perfect house, the perfect pets, the perfect husband, 2 lovely children, everything. It catapulted me out of what was really a mutually manipulative and controlling marriage into an 8-year battle for my children to prevent my own alienation from them after I'd been alienated from my own father. But in making that vow and keeping it, I didn't have to know what better was, but I just had to believe there was a way. Step on the path and the path will appear. Everything I needed showed up. Every book, if I had a question, the next thing I read in a book was the answer. In conversations I heard people pass along the street, just very, very slowly over 20 years, I kind of unraveled all of that conditioning and that understanding. And all of those modalities I talked about all pointed back to a few simple truths. And it's just been the most joyful journey. And I'm just, really happy to be here.
Isn't it crazy how the answers are all around you if you stop and look and you stop and listen?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about paying attention in the present moment. That's what the present moment mindfulness is about, paying attention, moment to moment, non-judgmental, curious awareness. Yeah, it's all there.
We're so.
Go
ahead, Lou.
Oh, all right. I was gonna say, have you ever read Deepak Chopra's Unconditional Life?
I have not read that book, but I have read some of.
You see, you're familiar with him though, Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of his. Just to comment, I enjoyed a lot of his early stuff when he was questioning, and then I think towards the end he sort of, started to believe his own press, and it got more rather than becoming questioning, this is the way, right?
Yeah.
But he used to say, find your inner voice. That if you can be quiet enough, you will hear a unique sound to you. And I'll tell you, it took a long, long time to find what I thought that voice was. But how about what sort of got you down? That book sort of started me down mindfulness. What kind of got you going down like the mindfulness route, that particular route?
Well, the first 10 years, I didn't even know what I was doing. I started meditating, doing yoga, physically, mentally, and spiritually, though, we're all connected. And I walked in to a bookstore in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and on the table was a book called Stand Up for Your Life by Cheryl Richardson. And in the introduction, it says, be careful what you ask for, because the universe will respond, and it'll provide you with the right people, situations, and events along the way. And so I started out in spirituality, and I moved from the Black Hills of South Dakota. I was too afraid to be a little fish in the big pond of Minneapolis. So after college, I went back to Rapid City. But then I moved to Minneapolis. I moved on to the greater New York City area, where I started to practice Buddhism, right? 5 years of Buddhism. And I, as life would have it, I just went to a class, and I heard a student talking to the teacher. She said, is there a deeper study? And the teacher said, well, we just finished a book study of 5 years, and we're going to start one called The New Heart of Wisdom, which was all about emptiness. So how fortunate for me to have a 2-year book study on the biggest teaching in Buddhism, which is that space between our thoughts, emotions, and feelings, where all that clarity and wisdom, amazing wisdom, comes through.
So did you shave your head?
No, actually, no, I was a lay person, but yeah, I have friends that, you actually get it when you ordain. You shave your head, and they hand you, there's a little bag, and in it are new names. And it's like, okay, this is, you're now Samsang, and you're now Shinshak. And so I had Genchoma. And
does it start Nam Young Ho Renge Kyo? Nam Yo Ho Renge Kyo?
No, I don't know.
That's that. There's a Japanese doctor at the VA here in Pittsburgh that does the chanting. But anyway, I remember my grandmother's funeral was a Buddhist funeral.
Oh, okay.
And they read the Nam Yang Ho Renge Kyo. I had to memorize it. That's the only reason I can repeat it now. To this, I couldn't tell you what I was saying.
Yeah. But they just get this new name because this is, this in Buddhism, this is a temporary experience. So
that's right.
You were Anne, but now you're Genchoma, and you were Valerie, and now you're Samsung. But no, I did not shave my head.
So forgive my ignorance, but do Buddhists believe in reincarnation?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Okay.
Many, many lives. In fact, I just had an amazing conversation with somebody about that recently, who thinks that the whole idea of reincarnation kind of were teachings that came after Buddha, but that's, we can go there if you want to, but that we've had many, many lives, and everyone is your precious mother. We've had lives since beginningless time, and we carry with us whatever karmic imprints that we keep in our very subtle mind that continues from life to life, that can ripen at any time. So you can have something ripen in this life that because of something you did many lives ago. Yeah.
And watch out for that karma.
Yeah. Ultimately, I practiced Buddhism, and I considered myself Buddhist for a while, but ultimately I still love the practices, and I still practice. But when I came out to California and I started reading some psychology that again pointed back to these simple truths that we are not our thoughts, emotions, and feelings. I think that even Buddhism, it has a lot of extra dogma and rituals that there's a westernized Buddhism, which is the one I practiced, but still, I appreciate so much that it's taught me, but I don't practice anymore. Yeah.
I live in a very blended neighborhood, and we have a lot of people from India, as well as other parts of Asia. And I was listening to a book on the history of India, and they were talking about sort of the nomadic tribes and things, and then they got into Buddhism, the different religions, and how they penetrated India. And they were talking about Buddhism and how some of the extreme sects, if you step on a blade of grass, right, type. And I couldn't remember the name, but I was talking to my neighbor, and I said, have you heard of and he was like, oh, they're so hard to cook for. I have friends, and oh my gosh. And, but you're it's a wonderful philosophy. I mean, there's a lot to be gained from it, I think,
A lot.
and a lot to apply to mindfulness.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say that I'm just I'm not educated on that particular religion. I have a rudimentary understanding of it, but I am fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by it. Believe it or not, all religions.
Yeah.
But were you always a spiritual person?
When I was what I call an enmeshment camp, I say, I tell people we live our lives in one of two camps, and we certainly switch between the two. One is the awareness camp, and one is the enmeshment camp. But when I was in the enmeshment camp, I did everything you're supposed to do. I was like in charge of vacation Bible school at my Lutheran church. I painted the sign and, did all of that. And then I didn't for a while, but then I was very spiritual. And then it led again, of course, to the Buddhism. But then what was amazing to me was when it came back to neuroscience and psychology. So there's a movie that came out in 2004 that I tell everyone to listen to. It's called What the Bleep Do We Know? Have you heard of that movie? Do you know that movie?
I haven't.
Okay. You should listen to that movie. And when it came, Dr. Joe Dispenza's in it, who's very popular now. And when it first came out, it was really, they tried to debunk it. Science tried to debunk it for, what it was telling us. Sure. But nowadays, science is really starting to catch up with the fact that our personalities, who we are, is much more malleable than previously thought. And one of the things I learned from Buddhism in general, but also, I don't know why I really understand this, but if you read something, like if you watch that movie, you have to watch it 3 times to really remember it, 8 times for it to sink in, and over and over and over to get it to really be solid and create a habit of whatever you're trying to learn in your head. But what was so beautiful to me was when all of these things, like I said, it's like it was destiny, right? That it just kept pointing back to this: we are not our thoughts, emotions, and feelings. When nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together. And when you unravel that, there's no ego there. There's no identity there, right? There's only that connects us all. And it's been fantastic. It helps you to let go of the seriousness of this experience and, trying to live joyfully and spend the rest. And I'm blessed to spend the rest of the time I have in this human experience to try to teach as many people as I can what I've learned.
So I've got a 2-pronged question here. I'm assuming, and I'm only assuming, but there's meditation associated with Buddhism?
Oh, yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
So have you ever had a wild, crazy experience while meditating?
Yeah, most days. Yeah. So do you know what the word meditation means in Tibetan?
I don't.
So the word for meditation in Tibetan is gom, G-H-O-M or G-O-M. And it means simply to become familiar with. Yeah. So we're just becoming familiar with what is already there. And since nothing's off the table, I do most of my meditating lying down at night before I go to bed and early in the morning. And, if I'm woken up in the middle of the night, because that's when your mind is quietest. And as you go to sleep and as you wake up, if you're open and if you have these thoughts of love and compassion, there's this amazing kind of buzzing vibration that comes over you. And I have that happen pretty often. And I try to hold on to it as long as possible. And I try to stay open. Ultimately, try to learn things in meditation and stay open in your daily life. But I haven't had that kind of, I talked to a friend recently that at 24 years old, he had this amazing 1-hour kind of I get how the universe works kind of thing, which would be fantastic. But I haven't had anything like that, but I have had a slowly kind of unraveling of everything to see. It's all about what you can see from either being enmeshed in your thought patterns in your personal thought system, or having distance between your conscious awareness and that thought system, so you can see it differently and respond with wisdom.
So can you tell me one more time what what the word meditation means again in
It
Tibetan.
means to become familiar with.
I like that.
Yeah. And it's like, how did I not know this? I only
Yeah.
figured this out like a year ago. It's like, why don't we, people say it's to empty your mind or, just to make your mind blank. Well, guess what? That's impossible, actually.
Yeah.
Your brain's going to fire and all of that, but it's just to become familiar with. And I tell people it's become familiar with what is already there. Ultimately, we are whole and complete underneath all of this neural net of thoughts and patterns. 95% of our patterns and defaults of the millions of bits of information that our brain takes in every second, we're unaware of. Right? So 95% of all our habits and patterns and defaults that make us who we are, that we take on as our personality traits, identify with, we really didn't have any control over. And so we take it as truth. We don't question it.
I think you may have just helped me turn the corner because I've tried meditating many times in the past, and just like you say, everybody says clear your mind, whatever, and I've tried meditating at night, laying down, and I always just fall asleep, and I get nothing out of it. But with that thought in mind, to become familiar, that takes tremendous pressure off of everything.
Right. And like I said, I only learned this like a year and a half ago. And P.E.R.L.O.V.E is an acronym. And the first is pledge. And we pledge 1 minute 6 times a day to watch your mind. Just 1 minute 6 times a day. And if you do that over and over again, you'll create a new neural pathway, a new habits. And yeah, so it doesn't have to be as laborious and as heavy as it has been kind of as people think it might be, I guess. So good. I'm happy for you.
Well, thank you.
I had an interesting class regarding like how you talk about like the neural pathways and repeat performances, solidifying actions. Someone, they were doing something. It was a CQB class. We were doing something, and somebody said, "Sorry, it was muscle memory," and we had to stop training. And the person said, "There's no such thing as muscle memory." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, if I knock you out now, you're gonna stand up, pull the trigger, and kill me." He said, "No." He said, "There's conscious memory." He said, "But we have to solidify the pathway."
Yes.
He said, "You have to do it right, and the more you do it right, the stronger that highway is gonna build." He said, "And then the thought travels faster. It doesn't have any resistance, no wall to bump into." He said, "That's what makes you quick." He said, "It's not muscle memory. It's a fully developed, fully functioning 6-lane highway."
I like that. I like that. And that's exactly right. You just taught my entire, first 3 practices. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's all about the pathways and what we've repeated over and over and over and over.
But we need architects like you to tell us. That's the thing. It is funny to say. I latched on to what you said earlier. Was I was doing things without knowing. I can't count the amount of times I'll tell somebody something and they'll put how I felt into words, and now I get it.
Yeah,
it took them putting it into words. So it takes people like you to help people like us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I just started the Mindfulness Blueprints Institute, and I'm giving a talk at an international women's conference in July called Subconscious Mind 2.0, right? That we are the architects of our own mental landscape. We just don't know. These are basics that should be taught to everyone. And my ultimate goal is to take the monies I make and any grants I can get to create this, to take these practices and put them in, create the content for middle schoolers, 5 to 8, because it's so needed there, to train them to be the trainers so they can understand that they can question some of the stuff that comes up. The suicide rate is higher than the homicide rate in that age range. So
remind me to talk to you about convened communities. I think that might be right up your alley.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that later.
Sounds great.
Much later. Well, there goes that thought. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. I was in Schopenhauer's World as Will book for a while, and then it just got a little bit too out of hand. Arthur Schopenhauer was Marx. I think he was Marx's inspiration, and or he was the inspiration for the guy who inspired, or no, he inspired Marx. That's right. Marx talks about Schopenhauer. But anyway, and the reason let me tell you why I went down this rabbit hole. I keep hearing people say, you're a communist. You sound like a communist. And I was like, you know what? I don't even know what the hell a communist is. I said, I know what people have told me.
Right.
I was like, but as I grow older, I realize things I've been told aren't necessarily, sort of what it is. Right. So I'm like, okay, let me go down this road. Let me see what this is. And it's all political theory and everything, but he keeps referencing this guy, Arthur Schopenhauer. So I get Schopenhauer's book, and it's called The World is Will, Volume 1. And apparently there's a volume 2. Some people have made it through 1, but
Oh boy.
I'll tell you what, it was fascinating, but it's written at a time that isn't mine, referencing things that aren't around for me to reference. But what he is talking about is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter that we disagree. That's your world, man. And you are going to operate like that. And I'm going to operate and I'm boiling down, believe me, hundreds of pages. I just saved you guys. Right. But he's basically saying it really doesn't matter, because whatever that person is perceiving, however they're perceiving it, is how they are going to operate.
It's true.
And
it's a concept of separate realities, right? No two people have the same thought system. No two people see the world in the same way. So two people can view an event and see it completely different. And Tim Olmsted is known as the small town Buddhist preacher, but also the president of the Pema Chodron Foundation. And I was fortunate enough to attend a class of his about 12 years ago. But he said, it's not Buddhism. It's not spirituality. It's how the mind works, right? If you have an angry mind, you see an angry world. If you're wearing pink glasses, you see a pink world. If you have a peaceful mind, you see a peaceful world.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to pay attention and to recognize those patterns and to say, hey, no, thank you. I'm going to create this one. And so the hypothalamus, it's not just in your head. The hypothalamus in your brain creates these peptides that are a peptide for anger, anxiety, joy. And every time you think these things, you send thousands of these peptides down into your body. And every cell in your body has thousands of receptors that take these in and get saturated. And so every time something's triggered, your whole body that's your emotional response, sends it back in the form of feelings. And then it's just even more true. And then you're in it, and then you're reinforcing it, and it goes on and on. And you're just stuck on this, hamster wheel until you're not. And without knowing, if you don't know what you don't know, if you don't know to question it, people, I've seen people live and die, stuck in that hamster wheel.
Even if you do know, it's so hard to break out of that cycle.
Well, the brain protects its programming. Right? We create these laws of transformation that all new ideas must go through, and they're changed and affected and rejected and thrown out if they don't meet these laws. And so if you don't do something over and over and over again, that programming will be wiped out in favor of those deeper neuro connections. And one of the reasons why change is so hard, because the brain also gives more emphasis on negative, has a negative bias, right? It gives more emphasis on negative than positive. So, but you can do it. It is possible. The only requirement, I say there's really kind of two requirements. One is that you be a human being. And I think most of us are humans, right? And so we have this ability to think, and it's not our thoughts. We can't control our thoughts. We can control our responses to those thoughts, our afterthoughts. And the second is that you have to really want to know. You have to be willing to be vulnerable and to let go of things you might already think, or be okay when the resistance comes up, when you hear those, this is stupid, this will never work. And you have to really want to know kind of the truth about yourself and the world. And
I was so hoping that you were going to say training and sustainment.
Training and sustainment.
That's an inside joke between Lou and I.
Okay.
But I would have watched him.
Possible.
But if you have those two things, I was asking a friend, why do some people can kind of get stuff. When it comes in, you're like, okay, I get that. And next thing I get that. And, is it past karma? Is it, just a previous life? Is it luck? Is it, and I think it's those two things. The first one, obviously, you have to have a brain and think, you have to be human. But if you really, really want to know, and you believe, and you're open and vulnerable, your truth it's hidden, waiting for you to show up. It's not gonna, it's there, right? When you become familiar with it.
So are you a neuroscientist?
No, I'm an
No,
architect.
well, I knew that, but I didn't know. I mean,
And that's just architects know a little bit about mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. So as a mindfulness architect, I know a little bit about this and a little bit about this, and
Sure.
and I just bring it all together. So, and that's the great thing. I don't need to be, because none of what I'm telling you I've made up. It's not like Holly's 7 steps to enlightenment.
Right.
It's definitely, every practice I have has teachings and different modalities to back it up. So I don't have to.
well, I had a question, but
Yes.
since you're not a neuroscientist, I was tempted to just not ask it, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway.
Okay, good.
So, thoughts on meditative processes with the adjuncts of, let's say, your hallucinogenics, your psilocybins?
Yeah, I think that I think what those, like mushrooms, you're talking about those trips and stuff, that does what meditation does. It is the quick way to kind of bypass all those thoughts, emotions, and feelings to that space. Absolutely, that's what it does. And it's temporary, but people get this amazing wow. Well, that amazing wow is possible through meditation. It just, obviously takes a little bit longer, and it's about paying attention and being consistent. But yeah, it's the same thing, I would say, in my layman's, non-professional, non-neuroscience way. Yes.
So the lazy man's way to meditation.
Yeah, you can do it. And I haven't done it, but I have felt these amazing open, it's amazing. It's like, it's awesome. So, and my niece has described to me, she's asked me if I want to do it. And I've had people describe to me what it's like. And yeah, it sounds like exactly the same. So yeah, people can do it. Obviously they do it.
I wouldn't get it from your niece.
Yeah, no.
Doesn't sound reliable.
No. I didn't get it. She went to, what is it, ayahuasca?
Sounds like it's going to be cut with butter. Nothing good.
Not kidding. So yeah, I think that's the same. So if you don't meditate, there you go.
In the Buddhist religion, what so do they believe in like spirits? Like, the Catholic religion has, the saints, the Holy Ghost, it's intercession.
It's interesting. That's a good question, Andy. Buddhism is one of the only religions that doesn't believe in a major religion that doesn't believe there's a God, for one thing. But there's Buddha. And so there's the Buddha of compassion, and there's the Buddha of wisdom, and there's the medicine Buddha, and there's emanation Buddha, and there's just tons of Buddhas, right? But ultimately, they're all empty. Right? Ultimately, they're all empty. Ultimately, nothing exists. So the mind, people, if I ask you, where's your mind, what would you say? Where would you say?
9 times out of 10 in the gutter.
No. Okay, that's not the answer I was looking for.
Oh, well.
So people think their minds are here, right?
Well, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Wasn't for Eastern religions, the word for mind and heart are the same word, and it was in Europe 400 years ago that they started to elevate it to the head and the brain, and so the mind is not just in the head; it's in the heart. But ultimately, when you open your heart, mind is everywhere. Nothing exists outside the mind. So the mind is creating everything that we see around us. And so if there are Buddhas, it's creating that too. Ultimately, everything is empty, an empty energy, an empty eternal source.
So interesting you bring this up. I listen to a lot of books and they all kind of get a little mixed up. But I was just listening recently, or it may even be in the one I'm listening to now. It's about 55 hours.
Oh my
But
God.
I know I start listening to these one a month, right? I have the Audible subscription.
Yeah.
Anyway, a while ago I was listening to a book, and like I said, it could be this one, but they were talking about Western science and various other things, and going down a few rabbit holes and stuff. But what they were saying was when they were talking a little bit about the human body, was they said we associate your consciousness as being in your brain because that's where the electrical activity that we can see occurs when thought
Right.
occurs. But nobody knows where your consciousness is contained. No one. He said that we assume it's up there because
isn't.
we've only been able to show the process that we see from the outside up there.
That's certainly what Google tells us. I actually looked it up on Google and it says, yep, it's right there in the brain.
No.
Oh, wow.
No one can prove it. No one knows.
No,
They said we
no.
assume because we see electrical activity there, but the
Mhm.
consciousness could be anywhere. It
Consciousness
could
is
be in
everywhere.
everything.
It's yeah, that's what Buddhism teaches. It's everywhere. And it's,
Well,
and
they
so,
talked about organ transplants where people have developed food allergies from the transplanter.
yeah.
Yeah. Or blood transfusions where people develop appetites for foods, until that blood washes out. But they talk about these different things and they're saying, well, how are these phenomenon occurring if it's only up in the brain? They didn't have a brain transplant. None of that should happen. None of it.
Yeah,
So they're
there's
saying,
actually,
we're guessing.
yeah, I think there's studies that show in worms and mice that if a mother or a grandmother was sick, got sick eating a certain thing, that grandchildren won't eat it.
Sure.
Is
Sure.
that continues. And yeah, the whole idea, it's funny because there's the four profundities in Buddhism. And the first one is the ultimate nature of reality, which is what I was talking about, emptiness and nothing exists outside the mind. And the second one is the conventional nature of reality, which is like, this is a computer. We'll call you Andy. We'll call you Lou. We'll call me Holly. This is we'll call this glasses, and we'll call consciousness here. And, we all agree on these things to communicate, but then we don't question them. But I think, we all know, right? It's no secret that this is the temporary situation.
Right.
Yet we hold on to it like this is it. And then there's some after this.
Like the great philosopher Jim Morrison said, no one here gets out alive.
That's right. That's right. As far as I know, there's nobody here that was here 200 years ago. So this is clearly the temporary situation, but we don't view it that way.
Right.
I think we've got it all completely wrong. And I think for thousands of years, we've been dumbing ourselves down and closing or actually for the architect in the room, building walls. And we've kind of shut down a lot of the potential that we have in our brains.
You are absolutely right. The mind is so powerful. I mean, we're literally creating our lives by what we think, but we don't believe that. So we're thinking a lot of crap, and guess what? We're getting, right, a lot of crap. Right? The mind is so powerful that we don't. You're right, but we shut it all down and we don't believe it. And
I'll give you a prime example. I have a couple friends that are ghost hunters.
Okay.
And I was the biggest skeptic in the world. In fact, my main thought process was I'm going to film these guys and I'm going to catch the obvious BS that's going on.
I'm going to show them how stupid they're being.
That's right. So, I went to a place called Edinburgh Manor in Iowa, and it's a very famous poor farm / asylum, you name it. And I had some things happen there that didn't just happen to me. It happened to a group of us that I can't explain. And my dog was there, and my dog reacted to it. So that tells me that there are things that are happening around us that I'm not going to say it is supernatural, but only from the true definition of the word supernatural. We just don't understand it yet.
We just don't understand how supernatural we are ourselves.
Right? Yeah. So
it's because we live in a computer.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What's that?
said
It's
that.
because we live in a computer.
Yeah. Well, we just don't learn to question. So like my ultimate goal is to, the younger the better. The younger you can start to learn to question, and the more we believe that that there aren't these limitations, the more there aren't these limitations. So
Well, and we learn and break new barriers. I mean, I joke about the world is a computer. There are some people that believe that, but I actually finally heard it explained in a reasonable manner by a pretty high level Google programmer. He said there are people who believe that because the planet is capable of it. He said the electricity in the atom structure, he
right.
said it's capable of it. You could run electricity through a rock. We've figured that out now. He's like, that's why people believe this, because the capability is there.
Right. They think
I
the whole
finally
world is
heard
a
it explained.
computer. They think we're in a computer.
Well, they think it's a simulation because he said it's possible to funnel. He goes, we've figured out how to compress information and we can send it through these things if we
Well,
want it.
ultimately, it is temporary, and it is,
I agree. And it is what we
so
make it.
yeah. So there's nothing to say it's not. It's created from energy.
And that's why I said that's why those people believe that. He said there are credible scientists who believe this is a simulation.
Yeah.
Like not as you would think, like we're in cages somewhere and VR'd up for no, but like that we were created to simulate something to answer a question for another consciousness. But he said the reason these credible scientists believe that is because we've discovered that energy is everywhere. Everything is in motion, and that we can transmit through, like we know theoretically, once we figure it out, we'll be able to transfer information through rocks. We just don't know how to do it, but we know it's possible because we figured that out now.
Well, Buddhism
said that's why they're
it teaches it's kind of the same thing. That everything appears from this emptiness, from this energy, from this mind.
Well, we're learning.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. These things, science is starting to point back to what millennial wisdom has been telling us for thousands of years. And that's what's so exciting. And even in psychology, the whole idea of the malleable personality, that our personality are made up of personality traits, which are made up of habits, which the subconscious mind is created from habits, from programming. So if we can go in and change those habits, we can change a big part of our personality. And it's an exciting time when that's what stoked me so much, especially as an architect, right? Because I'm used to seeing things from different perspectives, from the structural engineers to the mechanical engineers to the electrical engineers. And all of these different perspectives are pointing back to this kind of amazing power we have to create our worlds that we're not using right now, unfortunately, too much.
I think it's the aliens.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one.
Oh man, I'll go down that rabbit hole too.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that this, time itself is a manifestation. So this is the blip. So there's probably we're certainly not the only ones, and this is not the only time.
Yeah. George Orwell said, "Man, if we are, what a terrible waste of space."
Exactly.
He believed.
If this is it,
if
really,
we are,
and if there's really a heaven with everyone's up there. My question is, if you had, my dad had 6 wives, right?
Yeah.
So
he's there. He's in heaven. They're all in hell.
Right. When he goes,
no, I'm just kidding.
So when he goes to heaven,
the first 4 are in hell.
No. If they're all up there, who does he live with, or who's he?
Right. Who's
I got news for you. Heaven's like one big hippie commune.
But here's a question though, that this was poised to Ray Kurzweil. He's a Google futurist. He wrote a lot of the large language modules, or helped write AI that you're seeing today.
Right.
He's in his 70s. He's all about the transhumanism. I'll make that disclosure right now. He's all about when we merge with technology, and it's going to be the most wonderful thing in the world.
Okay.
But they asked him about aliens, and he was like, well, he doesn't believe, but because what he says is we don't see evidence of galaxy engineering. He said, and that's what we're doing, right? Like we're trying to move out and see if anyone's out there. We're broadcasting messages. We're doing all these things. We don't see any evidence of that of anyone else. He said, we don't see any dead signals or anything. But then he made a point, and I thought this was interesting because I haven't heard anyone counter an interviewer at the level that he's at with this thing. He said, don't sell us short too. We may be the apex.
Yeah.
He said, they may be waiting for us. He said, so don't sell yourself short. We're moving out. We're going forward, and we're going to take a huge leap in 2044. He believes that's his date. 2044, 2045. He says that's when we'll be able to map the inside of the human brain using the law of accelerated return with technology shrinkage. He said, so I'll follow your thoughts inside. I'll know right where the block is, right where the paralysis is. Right where
actually, I love that. Who's to say we haven't already merged with technology? We just don't know what the technology is.
Oh, he when you listen to him, he wrote the book The Singularity, right? Yeah, see, Andy knows I'll be here all night, but I'll wrap it up. But he was like, we already have about 80% of what was promised in the future. He said, you've just let Hollywood ruin it. He said, you're expecting, you've let Hollywood define what it's supposed to look like. He goes, but we already have virtual reality. We already have virtual worlds. We already have video communications. We already have 3D rendering. We already have all of these things, 3D printing. He's like, it just doesn't look like Star Trek. So you're pissed. He's like, he goes, you have to really manage your expectations.
That's a good point. But I just love that science and neuroscience and psychology are just now starting to catch up. And
yes,
I think,
and blend.
Yeah, absolutely. And this technology that they're talking about, I mean, this source that we all are is creating this already. So I don't know how much more technical you can get than that. But
so anyway. What advice, what one solid piece of advice would you give to someone that is having a difficult time meditating?
Well, I kind of already said, you start small, right? Start small, and if you think meditation is difficult, it will be difficult. So, but my biggest piece of advice I'd like to give people, and I've said it already as well, is if you want to learn something, anything, there's a CD given to me by John Kabat-Zinn 10 years into my journey, and I literally 600 miles from my hometown in South Dakota to where I went to college, 2 turns, but 600 miles, and I would listen to that CD over and over and over and over and over again. And so then it became, I know it, I lost it, and it was pirated. So sorry, John, if you're listening out there, but I don't even know which one it was, but I know it. I know it. And it's taught me so many things. So if you want to know something, even if meditation isn't it, but if you want to know something and you hear it and it sounds right to you, listen to it over and over and over and over again, or it will disappear. But if you do listen to it and, 21 days to make a habit, well, average 66 days to kind of really sink in, but you will know it and it will become part of your life. And that's a big change. You can change anything by that repetition.
Very cool.
What advice would you have for 2 moderately handsome men married to the wicked witches of the Far East
to help?
Did I mention my dad had 6 wives? I don't know if
I'm maybe we'll table that question.
Yeah.
How can we project positivity? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't think I'm the expert there to talk about.
No. But mindfulness. So I had an opportunity to participate in a mindfulness study for the VA for diabetes. Does mindfulness help with sugar management? I think I don't know what their overall conclusion was, but I did have to participate in the study for 6 months, and I had to log into an app, listen to recordings, meditate, and then journal about what I did on a nightly basis for about 6 months.
Wow.
So it was a really, really interesting time. I did it the first 2 weeks. I screwed off on it the next 2 or 3.
Right.
Because I felt I was too busy. The first 2 weeks were too hard, like you said.
That's that resistance you come up with.
Then I realized I'm stuck. I have to do this. And then I did it. But at the end, I was like relieved it was over because I looked at it more as a job.
You have to want it. You have to want it.
Yeah.
That's the other requirement. You have to want to know. If you're just doing it to do it, you're just, yeah.
But there was a ton of apps. But tell us more about what the institute you're starting up though. Like what do you have a website?
Yeah, so
What can we find when we go on it?
So the P.E.R.L.O.V.E formula.com, P.E.R.L.O.V.E, P-E-R-L-O-V-E, P.E.R.L.O.V.E is the acronym. Pledge, evaluate, recognize, locate, open, vest, and expand beyond your conditioned limits. If you sign up for the newsletter, there's a free 1-hour class that goes through each one of the practices and all the gurus and teachings behind it. I teach a monthly forum, two online classes a month. It's like $25 a month. So anyone that wants to, P.E.R.L.O.V.E formula, P.E.R.L.O.V.E formula, but I see put it up there. But so I want to keep it low cost. So anyone that wants to learn these things over and over and over again. And so from that, I just created the Mindfulness Blueprints Institute, where again, I'm hoping to take those teachings and create content for younger students. And
I like the elementary aspect. Introducing habits early. Certainly, I know my wife is Japanese, and
that's good that you know
they
that.
show. She always talks about how early in school they learn service. How they how they have to prepare the lunchroom for the other kids. They serve the other kids. Like it's a class rotation. Then they clean up after the other kids. Before they get to go out to recess, and then the next week it's the next class's job, and you just rotate through the kitchen. And she said that goes all through.
Absolutely.
And you learn not to be disrespectful because you'll be cleaning next week too. But they start early,
The sooner you learn this stuff, the better off you're gonna be. That's right.
So
Amy, that's my cue to shut up.
All right,
Me.
shut up, Lou.
yeah, pretty much. Anyway, that music, that is our introduction to our Veterans Helping Veterans section. And I think Lou said he could pull something out of his rear end tonight. Something about the Foreign Legion.
So every night, Andy and I get together right before, and we always like to highlight a veterans organizations for two reasons. One, to give you a reason to go back through the archives and listen to past shows, and two, we like to offer an opportunity for somebody to grow every day and give you a positive outreach for any veterans. So usually I do pinups for vets, but I will not be promoting pinups for vets, because Pinups for Vets has its own promotion at pinupsforvets.com. So I will not promote pinupsforvets.com. Instead, I will be talking about but anyway, when I was talking to Andy, he goes, "Do you have one?" I was like, "Oh man, I don't have anything, but we could use the classics like Marine Corps League." I said VFW and Foreign Legion. He goes, "You mean American Legion?" But I said, "I thought there was a Foreign Wars one." He goes, "Yeah, the VFW."
Well, you're doing well there.
I know, I'm doing very well. So I'd like to promote the American Legion at AmericanLegion.com. Head on out there, check them out. All you need to be is a veteran. They also have opportunities for friends of veterans and family members and stuff. Go check them out. Go check out your local American Legion. Listen, these organizations are getting old. They're aging out. I did join the Marine Corps League, and I joke, and I've joked in front of them, so I'm not saying anything without my fellow Marine Corps League members. I wouldn't say to them, but yeah, I lowered the average age in there by about 20 years, and immediately became every kind of guard you can imagine, right? Color guard, rifle guard, whatever, funeral guard. But you know what? I'm happy to do it because these organizations are getting older. The members are getting older, and I always say to myself, when they always say, "Lou, you come to the funerals," I say, "Well, I want you at mine. I want you at mine. So if I want you at mine, I'm going to come to yours." And they're like, "Well, mine better be before yours, 'cause you guys are older, right?"
Yes, we'd hope.
But anyway, the point is they are getting older, and if you have an opportunity to get out and help them out, they'd love any support they could have. And like I said, funerals, flag details, like on Memorial Day, Veterans Day. A lot of these guys are getting a little too old to march, but they don't want to see their their chapter not participate in a parade that it's participated in for 40 and some of these chapters histories 50 years. So get on out, support your American Legion, check them out, and if you got one near you,
some good baseball too.
Yeah,
American Legion baseball.
Yep,
that's right.
I had that in my hometown.
It's a fantastic organization. Every organization that we bring up on here is a wonderful organization. We're not picking one over the next. We're just providing you with resources that if you feel that you could benefit from them, like Lou said earlier, you can go back and watch past episodes and find out which ones we've highlighted and which one would best suit your needs. Wow, that almost sounds like a paid I can't believe I pulled that out of my rear end off the top of my head.
At least we're not promoting pinupsforvets.com.
Right. You should
Yes.
never promote pinupsforvets.com.
They have their own promotion, I hear.
Well, Holly, it's been an extreme pleasure. Please, we're going to end the show. Don't run away.
Don't go.
Sure.
Thank you so much. A wealth of knowledge. I learned several new things tonight. So
excellent. Glad to be
win,
here. Thank
win.
you.
I'm going to meditate tonight and fall asleep.
Excellent. That's the best way to do it, actually. And then eventually you'll wake up with that calm feeling. You'll see.
That would be nice for a change to wake up with a calm feeling. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Nothing's Off the Table. We will see you guys next week. Lou?
You're listening to Nothing's Off the Table and Dandy and Lou and Admiral Media Productions production. All information at the time of broadcast is mostly accurate. Comment below, give 5 stars, all reserved.